Hello and welcome to the latest Customs Clinic videocast brought to you by Customs Manager. I'm Paul Mullins of Sandusky PR and I'm going to be talking to Arne Mielken. I hope I've got your name correct there, Arne. Founder of Customs Manager. Yep. And we're going to be talking about trading with the EU now that the UK has left the European market. So hello, Arne.
Hello, nice to see you. Nice to be with you again.
Fantastic. So I guess the aim of the Customs Clinics to offer practical advice and guidance on some of the common problems that exporters and importers face when trading with the EU, well, and indeed the world, I guess. So one of the biggest issues causing businesses a lot of confusion and anxiety at the moment are these notoriously complex rules of origin. And many firms, I think I'm right in saying, Arne, are surprised to find that they can't benefit from tariff-free trade unless they satisfy these new rules. But they often struggle with the paperwork. So in a nutshell, Arne, what are the rules of origin and who do they apply to?
Rules of origin help determine the economic nationality of your product. So you could have products that come from China and they've been produced and manufactured in China, and then they have a Chinese origin. However, there are also products that are just transported from country A to country B and then exported out of country B to country C, and then it becomes more complicated, right? Because what is the right country of origin? Is it where the goods come from, or is it where the product was produced? So there's a bit of confusion here, and it becomes even more puzzling when the rules of origin apply to goods that have multiple manufacturing processes in different countries. So create a car, you produce it in this country, then you produce it in that country, and then you get confused because where was this car made? So it's the economic nationality of a product, and it applies to everybody who wants to import the product, then needs to decide what the origin is. There are two types of origin, but the one most are interested in is the so-called preferential origin. And that, I think we might want to talk about today, applies to anybody who imports and who wants to save some money, potentially.
Okay. So how do you establish the origin of your goods? I mean, using the example you gave, or if you make a product that has multiple ingredients or components, how do you establish, how do you go about doing that to qualify for duty-free trade?
There is a general rule that applies almost all the time, if not all the time, in fact. And it is where the last substantial, economically viable processing took place. Or where the product, I call it, was born. What do I mean? So there are different types of products. The first set is the agricultural products. They are born, well, where the animal is born, or where the plant starts to grow, or where the minerals are taken out of the earth. So that's called wholly obtained. And if something is wholly obtained, well, that's then their origin, because literally this is where it's from. The other way, though, is, as I said, when you produce a product of multiple raw materials or components, you then need to look into where this last substantial, economically significant processing took place. And every word matters here. Last, substantial, and we can argue for a long time what substantial means, but there are clear definition, and then economically significant processing took place. So where the components, when put together, become an actual car, for example. So these are the two generic rules that you have to think about. Either it is agricultural, then where is it created? Like where does it come out of the ground or is it born? And economically last transformation, where is the product put together and transformed from raw material into the new value-added product. These are the generic rules, but then there are product-specific rules and granular details in trade agreements we need to maybe discuss.
Yeah, no wonder business owners are pulling out their hair trying to get their head round establishing the the origin of the goods, particularly if they're made from multiple ingredients and components. So I guess some of the larger companies will be equipped, they'll have the in-house expertise, but maybe some smaller businesses may not necessarily have that specialist knowledge. So what are the major stumbling blocks? What common mistakes do businesses make when addressing rules of origin?
So I would point to, well, let's start with two. The first one is to misunderstand this concept of where does a product originate from with where is it shipped from.
Right, okay.
So understanding that where something is shipped from doesn't necessarily mean that this is where it was produced or transformed, and that could trip you up. The second is to understand that there is a difference between the types of origin, meaning there is a non-preferential origin which applies in every case, and there is a preferential origin, and that's treated differently. I won't go into details now, but they have different requirements and they have different way of putting that onto the customs declaration. So you could have a non-preferential origin that doesn't meet the preferential origin, and that we need to go into the details of what the preference and the non-preferential difference is. But that is something that companies struggle to understand because it's not very easy to understand, quite frankly. And I guess the third thing I would say is that people or companies go with the general rules that I've explained now, with the transformation and this is where it's transformed, without understanding that despite these general rules that I've explained, it's unfortunately not the end of it. For preferential trade, you need to meet the rules of the actual trade agreement. So you need to open that 1,000 page plus complicated lawyer talk document, find two sets of rules. First, the generic rules of origin in the kind of front of the text, and then the product specific rules of origin at the kind of annex back of the text. So take the EU-UK trade agreement. You would first need to make sure that you meet the overall rules of origin, like insufficient processing. Some processes just don't qualify ever as originating, or you start to make stops in between. You go from Japan to Dubai to Turkey and then to the EU, and then you wonder why you don't qualify anymore. Well, you made all these stops in between, so that's not cool. But once you met these general rules, you then need to go to the back of the book, so to speak, and look at how you meet these product-specific rules, and that's complicated. So there are lots of ways that businesses might find themselves in a bit of trouble, and it's really working through these aspects bit by bit, step by step, and finding out what a business needs to do and how you can best meet these rules of origin. That brings the most reward, and make sure you get it right.
Okay, so in terms of making a correct statement of origin and other terms, supplier declarations, any advice on that and where they should go?
Yeah, you reminded me of a good area that I didn't mention actually, and that is the proof of origin. You are right. You need to prove that a product originates, right? It's no good me telling you it originates or a business saying, well, it originates. You need to prove it. And the way you do that is with the proof of origin seen in the trade agreement. And that could be a certificate of origin. It could be a statement on origin. It could be importer's knowledge. Lots of ways you can work with this. In the EU-UK trade agreement, the two ways are the statement on origin and importer's knowledge. And the key message here is that you can't just arbitrarily put the statement on an invoice, a commercial invoice. You need to know that you actually meet the rules of origin step one. Step two, when you do put it on an invoice, do make sure it has the correct text, right? As foreseen by the trade agreement. Don't start to add anything, remove, and if in doubt, get advice first on how to complete it before you put it on an invoice. Because if you do put it on the invoice without due consideration, well, the customs may not like it, the customer may not like it, and if they all don't like it, then the two people that can hold up your goods at the border and make this import-export situation difficult are not happy. You want to make them happy. So make sure you copy and paste directly from the legislation, you complete it correctly, and only when you have a right to do so because your products originate.
Okay, now that sounds like sound advice, and I think already we're learning that rules of origin is a potential minefield if you don't do your homework and work through the process methodically.